welcome to our Diwali special, Samavat 2071. Clearly, the year that has gone by has been an extraordinarily successful year. Diwali to Diwali, the Nifty, the Sensex have gone up well over 30%, and the mid-caps have had a stupendous rally, depending on which index you want to pick. Now the question is the best of the rally over, or are we going to get a manifold rally in the coming Diwali or the coming Diwalis? To exactly ask that question, I have with me my star Diwali panel. I have with me Ramesh Damani, the veteran broker in the Bombay Stock Exchange. I have with me Manish Chokhani, at the moment chairman of TPG, the private equity fund, but a veteran of the markets no less, and Samir Arora of Helios Capital, who is joining us from Delhi. Samir, you are wearing the FII hat at this point in time because you are not in your Diwali finery. But nevertheless, you are as welcome, in fact, maybe more welcome to the show at this point in time. Gentlemen, a very happy Diwali to all of you.
Happy Diwali.
And now let me see what you have in store for our zillions of viewers who are hanging on to every word to know whether the next Diwali is going to be more brilliant, more rewarding for them from a stock market point of view. Mr. Damani, to you first, since you have perhaps seen more Samvats than some of us here. Maybe a few more than some of us here. What's the sense you are getting? Are we, as you pointed out some time back on one of our shows, that we are at the start of a massive bull run? Is the bull run 1/3 over? Is the bull run half over? What does it look like from here on up to the next, or Samvat 2073?
Such an easy question to begin with.
Okay. Feel good question.
Yes, feel good. It's a softball. We're firmly on a bull market grip. Bull markets, like I've often mentioned to you, the Japanese bull market lasted 25 years. We don't know how this will last, but all the portents are good. Let me just take you through the key data points, Latha. Globally, interest rates in India are going to go down. Inflation is going to come down. Growth is going to accelerate. Whereas globally, interest rates are probably headed higher. Inflation they're trying to get it higher. And growth is anemic everywhere in the world except in India. And we are now floating on a global liquidity of oil. Cheap oil prices is one of the greatest beneficiaries that India will have. So the portents are extremely good. And plus, we have a new government in Delhi that is enthused with the power of change, the power of new ideas. So I would be optimistic, as you said, not only for this Diwali, but perhaps for the next few Diwalis.
But is it a 30% from 2071 to 2072 somewhat?
Those are always difficult to say. The trick in the bull market is to see how low can it go. Not to worry about the high. The highs can be 50%, can be 25%. It doesn't really matter. In the context of a bull market, we know the index can go up double, triple, and then some. So we are looking at that from, say, a base of 17,000, 18,000. The index can go fairly high. The thing is that it should not have more than a 10% correction, perhaps, in my view.
Okay, that's a fair point. I'll come to building the ambience, the global ambience first, and so go to the supposed FII on the panel. Samir, what's your sense? Is the global environment as clement as Mr. Damani is making it out to be? Yes, cheap oil for now, but that also could be because there is a risk aversion as well. We get these bouts of risk aversion. Will global capital be kind? Are we going to continue to see a clement global environment towards Indian equities?
I think global environment for India will be very, very positive, particularly in the last few weeks where cynics were thinking that Mr. Modi will only do this and no more. And we had always betted on the point that Mr. Modi, if you're betting on him, you don't bet for 6 months and then start getting nervous in the 7th and 8th month. But with all the new initiatives he's taken, which according to me were well expected by any reasonably clued in individual into the Indian markets, but this reinforcement of the fact that this is beyond just the global environment. Global environment, I think, is very conducive, but the big picture is that foreigners have still not invested enough in India or taken an active enough bet in this year. This year, foreign flows into India are actually lower than what they were last year. In absolute, we are up some 13-14 billion in terms of FII flows into equity, and last year were more like 19 or 20 billion. And this is after a big event which was well telegraphed and still people refuse to believe. So I think that the foreign flows into India are actually nothing. But in addition, now we believe that we have turned the corner in terms of Indian sentiment also. So I think this rally is big and it's going to be long term. But don't box us, three of us, in as to whether it will be in this Diwali 30% or 20%. It will be big overall and for a long duration of time. beyond a point doesn't matter whether everything happens in the next 3 months or in the next 6 months or even in the next 1 year.
No, I take your point. I mean, there is a headline hunting in trying to find out what is the next Samvat going to be like. But I take your overall message that we are on the cusp of something big. But, describe to me this something big, Manish, if you can. Are we in that 1991 moment when, all the parameters changed for us? In one press conference, I remember the license Raj was rendered illegal. Or are we in that 2003 moment when, we shook off 6 years of perhaps downturn and just got onto a higher business cycle, but not necessarily a political economic cycle?
Well, there are two parts. So one, the global cycle is fairly scary in some sense because the force of gravity, which is interest rates in the world, is artificial. And all this money pumping is really akin to the Y2K kind of boom, which artificially lifted every asset class in the world. So, but that is extremely supportive for a country like India, unless the world completely collapses and gets into deflation. So oil till $80, $75 is great, but if oil is $50, that means the world is in a really bad shape. Yeah. So having said all of that, we expect the world will muddle along, central banks will keep pumping money back, you'll get these corrections globally. The Indian environment looks not like 91 where you had to reform under pressure, not like 2003 where money just gushed in mindlessly and lifted, in my view, a lot of bad quality stocks. It is a seminal moment for India because this country has decisively, in my view, moved to right of center in terms of economic policy making. And from being a sarkar of where sarkar is my baap, where I will decide and I will hand out to the citizen, it's trying to make the government smaller, speedier, so that the citizen comes at the center of decision making and the government becomes progressively smaller. And all the right moves in terms of trying to get volume growth in the economy by way of oil sector reform, mining reform, manufacturing, defense, they are all the right moves to build volumes. To enhance productivity, all these administrative reform, the dirty parts which no one wanted to touch, administration, labor, GST, all these are all on the anvil, and I would imagine the period between now and the next budget to be full of drama. And given the mature administration which is playing it like a chess game rather than a big bang announcement which pleases maybe markets and media, there is a real politic and there is a way to play this in a mature way, which I'm very, very optimistic and hopeful about the way things are going.
Is the market wrong in expecting big bang reforms? At the press conference while announcing the coal e-auctions, it was very clear that the ministers were repeatedly telling us, Coal India's interest will not be harmed, Coal India interest will not be harmed. I mean, not even something like commercial mining, not even something like nationalization of coal is going to be abrogated. It looks like they're not thinking reform at all. Then where is so much bonhomie coming from?
Latha, if you read an interview with Maya Raman, who recently became the tourism secretary from the finance minister, he said if you're expecting, say, from divestment to privatization, you're expecting removal of all capital controls, that's not going to happen. The government has already set its priorities out according to him, which is, of course, the smart cities, the Delhi-Bombay Industrial Corridor, GST, labor reforms at the state level. I think the market will be disappointed. They're looking for this big, overarching intellectual reform. There'll be more incremental reform and there'll be more focus on governance. But it's enough to take the market through to a very prosperous Samvat 2071. I think we just look through those verticals, there are ample opportunities for growth, and the environment, as Manish pointed out, is so benign to India that, we are almost in a perfect storm. Our moment is not to compare us to, say, 91 or 2003, but to compare us to Japan of 1964. A third world country, in the next 25 years, became a first world country member of the G5 nation. It survived the crash of the Dow and still went on to make new highs. The index went up from 1,000 to 40,000. So we are on a similar trajectory. I'm not suggesting a 40x move in the index for sure, but I'm suggesting a similar trajectory. If luck holds us in good stead and we continue to get good economic policies, we will see a long multi-year bull market which will significantly change the face of this country. It's not about making money on the last street. It's about changing this country. I think there's a real tangible possibility that 25 years from now, India will be a far different country than it's today.
Okay. Yeah. No, don't look for policies. Policies are there, but get them implemented is perhaps what Mr. Modi is talking about. And clearly, I mean, the fact that he began by speaking about cleanliness, that clearly indicates that
how could he not support that? I mean,
heart in the right place. But Samir, let me just get you in on this. Will you be looking for anything by way of reforms from this government? What will you be looking for? What have you seen of it now that gives you so much the optimism that you expressed when you began speaking?
Well, this year and since September last year, we've been very bullish and enjoyed it a lot. But the main thing always has been that India does not need reforms. It just needs even better implementation of the worst possible policies, even if they were there. Let us say that Manrega, which many people consider negative, was just done efficiently so that there was no diversion of subsidy, and it went to right people, and that maybe you built something more meaningful than digging trenches which would then be filled up again. Let us say any of these was done even properly. I think that itself would be a big deal. So our first bet always was that Mr. Modi, because of his track record in Gujarat, by the way, since 1947, Mr. Modi is the first Prime Minister to have had a job before he became Prime Minister, which was somewhat leading to having a P&L. I don't mean in that way. That way, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was a pilot and other people. But broadly, somebody who ran his own P&L for 9-10 years and therefore knew governance and administration and how to deal with bureaucracy and other groups and things like that. And not be an economist or a freedom fighter or a politician and stuff like that. So that is the first thing. But also the government has benefited from policies that were started by the previous government. I think the number one most bullish thing in future, even if you just implement it properly but don't do new reforms, is UID. Because the amount of subsidies that have been diverted, whether it is scholarships to people, whether it is midday meals, all of them can be controlled if you use your fingerprint to see whether that's the right person and whether the kid is going to school before you give midday meal subsidy for him and things like that. So many of the even previous government's policies, because they will come to fruition in this government. And I think Mr. Modi is a real leader to bring up things in a National Independence Day speech that na main khaunga na khane dunga, where everybody in those kind of speeches say how great we are as a nation, how we have been born with greatness, to bring up such hard hitting problems that we are a dirty nation, knowing that this problem cannot be solved in 5 years, and therefore people will say, oh, you see, he just says it, he can't deliver it. But to even bring up such things which people don't bring up, A, because they're embarrassed, and B, because they know that this is a long-term solution that will be there. It can't be done in 2 years. That's why I think that if you bet on some things, you have to bet on everything. And therefore I say to the Indian investor, if you really believe that nothing has changed, stay out. But I don't think they can say that this is the same country as it was a year ago. But if they still want to be cynical, it's okay. Foreigners will pick up the slack.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, you'll have laid out the terrain most evocatively and convincingly. At this point, we will take a break. But hereafter, we have to handle somewhat more near-term questions because people who are listening to us are investors. We are back in a minute with more tangible questions, more near-term questions to my star panel.